Welcome to my channel. If you are ready to fall asleep, let's start our story. The world does not begin with a voice in the Forbidden City. It begins with the absence of one. You wake before the morning drumbeat, when even the sparrows in the rafters are still curled against the cold beams of the outer servants. You rise not with grace, but with obedience, every movement quiet, practiced. Delicate, because you are watched, but because you always might be. Quarter, and the light of it can be called that is nothing more than a slow exhale of gray seeping in through frost-glazed paper windows. There is no alarm, no bell, no sharp word, only the memory of duty and the weight of routine pressing against your ribs like a wooden board long since molded to your chest. Someone else will be punished for it later. That is how the order remains intact. You wonder if they were placed to watch the emperor, the ones who serve him. Your sleeping mat is thin, not from age, but from design. You are not meant to sink into it. Comfort is not useful here. In the Forbidden City, silence is not just the space between sounds. It is a discipline, a devotion, a kind of survival. The walls do not echo. They absorb. They remember. You move through the corridor where steam has not yet risen from the rice kettles. Your breath trails like incense, your slippers soft against the icy stone, your robe wrapped tight with the precision of someone who has never owned anything not assigned. Dust is the enemy of perfection, and perfection is what this city was built to protect. You do not sweep quickly, you sweep right. The strokes are even, timed with your breath. You count them. 1, 2, 3, pause, 5. A missed beat means a mark. A mark means inquiry. Inquiry means transfer. Transfer means exile, or worse, visibility. You do not speak to the boy beside you. He does not speak to you. You both bow slightly when passing the lacquered door where the eunuchs reside. You do not know their names. You are not supposed to. As you reach the outer courtyard, you bow toward the inner gate, not because someone watches, but because it is the only way to cross. The emperor is not there. He will not rise for hours. But even the possibility of his presence curls like smoke through every motion. Your task today is simple. Sweep the western corridor before the dust collectors arrive. You pass a cracked tile. You do not look at it. You are not told to notice. You look up only once, toward the roofs where golden beasts perch in frozen procession, silent guardians who do not blink. And then, as the morning drum echoes once, deep and low like the earth exhaling, your day truly begins. The broom glides slowly across the smooth stone tiles, its bristles, whispering in rhythm with your steps, and though the courtyard is nearly empty, you move as if every gesture might be watched, not by eyes, but by the silence itself, which in this place is more enduring than stone and more powerful than any command. Your feet make no sound. Your breath does not rise. The air is cold and still. The city has not fully awakened. Then, as you sweep beneath one of the outer columns in unmarked corner near the bronze bell that never rings, you see it. A scrap of paper, small and curled at the edge, caught between a floor crack and the lip of a sun-worn paving stone. It is not official. not folded like a dispatch, not sealed with red wax. It is too soft, too worn, as if it had passed through too many hands or none at all. And yet it is here, uncrushed, unburned, untouched. You glance around not with fear, but with care and kneel. The paper yields easily, as though waiting for you. Its surface is pale, and the ink faint, as though the message it carries is not meant to endure, not meant to last beyond the breath that carried it forward. There is no text, no words, only a single image, drawn in faded charcoal. 3 waves. Not waves of water, not the sea, but curls, spirals, mirrored and layered like smoke caught in wind. You stare at it. The lines are not symmetrical, not decorative, not like the dragons or phoenixes carved above the imperial gates. This is different, humble, repeated as if traced from memory. The symbol is nothing, but it feels like something older than the emperor, older than the city itself. On its reverse is a faint smudge, not a fingerprint, more like a thumb that pressed just long enough to leave something behind. You press your own thumb there, gently, not to copy, but to feel if the gesture means anything. You try to fold it back as it was, but your fingers hesitate. You turn it instead. It doesn't, and it does. You slip the paper into your sleeve knot to hide it, but because you don't know where else to put it, the broom waits. You return to sweeping, but now each stroke sounds different. The silence is no longer empty. It is waiting, watching, listening, and you feel, without knowing why, that the symbol you carry is older than the gate, and that somewhere, someone else is holding the same paper, right now, in silence. The sound of the broom resumes, slow and deliberate, but something has shifted. Not in the air, not in the stones, not in the rhythm of the forbidden city, but in you. As if some thread has been tugged loose, and now the corners of the world no longer sit as tightly as they once did. The paper is warm against your wrist, tucked inside the sleeve of your robe, like a borrowed breath. You've been trained not to flinch, not to respond. In the forbidden city, reacting too quickly is as dangerous as not reacting at all. And though no bell has rung and no decree has been posted, you feel that you have already crossed into a place no map records. You continue sweeping, but your eyes begin to strain out in defiance, not in curiosity, but in quiet vigilance. And then you feel it, the presence of someone behind you. You don't turn at first, but after a long moment, you let your gaze drifting out your head, only your eyes in there. At the far end of the corridor, where the morning light just begins to lean into the stone, stands the night watchman. You've seen him before, everyone has, but no one knows his name. He walks with a lantern that is never lit, a staff that never strikes the floor, and a silence that is heavier than any uniform. He is not a eunuch, not a soldier, not a monk. As though he, too, has seen the 3 waves. He belongs to no court, and yet no one questions his presence. He walks where he wishes, sees what he wishes, and speaks to no one. He is watching you. Just once. Not with accusation, not with suspicion. The path that curves not through rooms or gardens, but through silences that run deeper than the walls, but with something stranger acknowledgement. His head tilts just slightly, not in greeting, not in warning, but as though he, too, has held a piece of paper once. He raises his lantern. It does not glow, but the motion is enough. And slowly, deliberately, he bows. A bow not of submission, not of command, but of recognition. And then, without sound, he turns and walks away into shadow, into corridor, into whatever spaces exist between the known and the unspoken. You do not follow, you are not meant to. You resume sweeping, but every stone beneath your feet now feels different, no longer merely part of the palace, but part of a larger rhythm. You glance again at the edge of your sleeve. The paper does not move, but you feel its weight growing not heavier, not burdensome, but present, alive. The broom brushes one final leaf from the corridor, and you realize the morning is fully here. And the gate, though never closed, is no longer the same. The noon drum has not yet sounded, yet the corridor that funnels servants toward the lesser refectory already trembles with the muted shuffle of shoulders brushing silk-draped walls. And you move among them without haste, guided more by the hollow in your stomach than by any official schedule. Sleeves gathered tight to hide the scrap of paper that now seems to hum beside your pulse. The passage narrows, turns, opens into a low-roofed hall where steam drifts in pale ribbons from cauldrons set over glowing charcoal. And for a heartbeat, his palm turns outward, 3 fingers curling, not quite a gesture, not quite a sign, yet your heart stammers in recognition. The spiral rendered in negative space, then gone. You finish the broth, throat warm, eyes stinging, and place the bowl back on the tray with deliberate silence. The salt lingers on your lips, on your breath, as though the story has chosen this route to speak, a tale steeped into marrow, disguised as seasoning, impossible to refuse. And when you step into the corridor once more, the paper in your sleeve feels lighter. It's as if part of its burden has dissolved across your tongue and entered your blood, carrying its silent waves deeper than speech could ever reach. And the smell: rice, porridge, boiled thin, cabbage, stewed, slick, broth, thickened by bones, to long simmer should be the same as every day. Yet, when you step across the threshold, it pricks your skin with something unfamiliar, sharp as a bell struck underwater. You take your wooden bowl, offer it forward, and the cook ladles soup without looking, his motions practiced, unbroken, but his eyes hooded. Restless lift for a single instant, catching yours not like a net, but like a whisper. And in that flicker, you see a reflection of the 3-wave mark. It's not drawn, not spoken, but present in the wet gleam along his lower eyelid, as if brine itself carries memory. You bow without knowing why, retreat to a bench worn smooth by generations of silent meals, and raise the bowl, letting the steam fog your lashes, the surface quivering with tiny islands of rendered fat. The first sip jolts through you, not scalding, not bitter, but startlingly, impossibly salty, as though an ocean's worth of tears has been dissolved into this one humble ration. Yet no one around you flinches, no murmurs ripple through the room, because each palate responds in private. And here, privacy is the true luxury. You swallow again, slower, and taste beneath the salt an undercurrent of something almost sweet, like ginger scorched too quickly, and you realize the cook has changed nothing, visible none would dare, but has altered the balance just enough to awaken memory at the back of the tongue, where stories linger long after words are forgotten. Each spoonful becomes a tide, carrying you inward, and suddenly you remember dawn light slipping across a cracked tile. Remember a lantern that did not burn. Remember waves traced in charcoal by hands not your own, memories layered upon one another, the way salt layers upon stone when the sea pulls back. Across the room, the cook lifts his ladle again, pauses, flicks a grain of something pale and crystalline into the cauldron. After the meal, the afternoon stretches long and pale across the courtyards and your steps. Carry Iwan Bedin, unsummoned ward. The garden that no one tends, but which always appears tended, where stones lie in perfect stillness beside raked gravel and clipped pines, lean just enough to appear as though shaped by wind rather than hand. It is not your duty to be here. This space is reserved not officially, not in ink, but by the quiet rule of presence, the kind that cannot be written but must be obeyed. Still, you enter, not with boldness, not with fear, but with a softness shaped by the memory of salt still clinging to the back of your tongue and the weightless pressure of a paper hidden in your sleeve. You walk along the narrow path laid between stepping stones, head slightly bowed, not in shame, but in reverence for silence that is older than orders, deeper than decrees. The garden does not acknowledge you. It does not need to. It breathes in moss, in stone, in the hush between the flap of bird wings and the dry crackle of a bamboo leaf falling onto gravel. You pause near a twisted pine tree, its bark spirals naturally coiled and cracked like time itself, and for a moment your fingers itch to trace the shape, but you don't, not yet. They rest on her knees, still and calm, as if she has been waiting. Instead, you kneel beside the koi pond. The water is still, not even the fish move. Their gold and white bodies hover as if held by thought alone, right? Their eyes are open, unfocused, ancient, and there across the pond, beneath the shade of a drooping willow, you see her, a girl, perhaps your age, perhaps not. She wears the robes of the laundry house, faded blue with ivory threading, but her hands are not red with soap or scarred from rope. You do not speak. No one speaks here. You bow, but your eyes meet for a breath too long, and in her left hand, resting palm up on her lap, is a folded paper, smaller than yours, but folded the same way. You feel the air shift, not with wind, but with memory. She nods once, not a greeting, not a gesture, just an acknowledgement that you are both in the same garden, and perhaps have been for longer than you realized. She does not vanish. She does not move. She is still there when you rise and step back along the stones. As you pass the spiral pine again, your hand reaches out, not deliberately, not consciously. Your finger brushes once across its bark. The shape matches the drawing. Spiral is not imagined. It is part of the wood, part of the garden, part of the city. And as you leave, the gravel does not shift under your feet, and the silence follows you like a shadow. But now you know it is not emptiness. It is attention. The evening fades without incident. You complete your remaining duties, sweeping, folding, refilling the brass lanterns with oil. You'll never see Litan return to your sleeping mat before the third watch bell. No one speaks. No one dares to in this hour. The silence deepens into something almost physical, like velvet pressed against your skin, or like water just beginning to freeze. The paper is still hidden in your sleeve, now pressed under your robes beside your ribs. There is no ceiling above, only a sky black as ink, speckled with stars that seem to drift slowly, as if the heavens themselves have forgotten where they're going. The walls on either side of you rise tall and unbroken red lacquer, unmarred, stretching endlessly into the dark and yet they seem to breathe. They expand and contract with a pulse so slow, so deep, it could be the heart of the city itself. You do not remove it. You do not need to. Sleep arrives, not quickly, but thoroughly. And then the dream begins. You are walking, not on stone, but on silk-long sheets of red silk that rippled beneath your bare feet as you move. You continue walking. The air is warm, sweetened with a faint scent of osmanthus and inkstone. Then you notice the spirals, not drawn, not carved, not painted, but woven into the lacquer of the walls, as if they've always been there beneath the surface, waiting for night to pull them forth. You reach out. Your fingertips hover. The spiral shimmers faintly, like water catching moonlight. One in a reflection of a basin. As you touch it, a sound not quite a voice fills the space. It is not spoken. It is remembered. The figure raises its hand, its palm out, spiral marked in charcoal, identical to yours, identical to the girl's, identical to the cook's eyelid, identical to the pine's bark. A hush with the shape of a question or a name. You don't answer. You walk on. More spirals appear. No steps echo outside your chamber, but your heart is loud in your chest, as though it has taken on the sound the city refuses to make. One on a lantern. One swirling in the steam of a teacup resting on an invisible table. Each one is slightly different. Each one seems to move. And then, ahead, a shape neither man nor woman, neither servant nor master stands, cloaked in robes that shift color with each blink. You try to speak, but the dream does not allow sound, only presence. And when you blink again, the figure is gone. Only the spiral remains drawn now, not in ink, but in light. It pulses once, twice, and becomes the whole world. You wake with the darkness still thick around you. No bell has rung. You sit upright, reach into your sleeve. The paper is still there, but it is warm now. And on your palm, where it rested during the dream, there is a faint trace of ink. The spiral is following you, or perhaps you are following it. Dawn arrives not with music, but with footsteps, the kind that never hurry, never stumble, yet always reach you before you expect them. A senior steward face unreadable gestures once and speaks not to your name, but to your presence. You are to clean a chamber, No reason is given. None is needed. You bow, fall in step, and follow without question. The corridor winds toward the western wing less traveled, older, quieter. Here, the windows grow smaller, the carvings fainter, the silence thicker. Here, we're brought before a door, lacquered in black and framed in gold, that has faded to the color of autumn leaves left too long in rain. The steward does not enter. He only nods once and leaves. You wait a moment, hand hovering above the latch. The wood beneath your fingers is cold, despite the morning heat. Inside, the air is heavy, the kind of stillness that does not merely linger, but has settled, layered, claimed. This was once a consort's room, or perhaps an empress's. You can't be sure. The furniture is draped in silk covers, untouched. The floor bears no footprints. The scent is of dried lotus root and something faintly metallic, like old coins wrapped in gauze. You begin with the broom. You sweep slowly, as always, deliberate, even, breath measured to the motion. The dust moves willingly, as if eager to be remembered. And then, near the far wall, your eyes find the mirror. Tall, oval, its frame carved in plum blossoms and phoenix tails. The glass is dark not from dust, but from years. It vanishes. You approach it. You have seen mirrors before. But this one does not reflect as it should. At first, it offers only shadow of the vague outline of the room behind you. The shimmer of your robe's sleeve, your lowered eyes. But then, slowly, softly, as if drawn not by light, but by thought, something takes shape along the bottom edge of the glass. Not a crack, not a smudge, a spiral, drawn not by hand, but by condensation. Thin, perfect, unmistakable. 3 waves, turning inward. You step back. No breath fogs the surface. The room is warm, and yet the symbol holds. You wipe the mirror, but the shape has already etched itself behind your eyes. You finish cleaning the room in silence, but each movement now feels observant, not by anyone outside, but by the walls, the air, the furnishings that remember a presence once too powerful to be erased. When you leave, the steward is not waiting. The corridor is empty. But as you pass the threshold, you glance once more behind you. The mirror is clean, and in its polished depth, your reflection is gone. Only the spiral remains, floating, waiting. Night folds itself softly across the red roofs of the forbidden city, and though the bells have ceased and the corridors have emptied, you do not sleep not because you are restless, but because something inside the silence has begun to breathe. You are not at peace. You are simply listening. The paper in your sleeve is no longer only an object. It is a weight, a warmth, a rhythm. Its presence hums beneath your ribs like a second heartbeat. You lie on your mat, eyes open, watching the shadows on the ceiling shift like ink in water. You are not afraid. And then you feel it. You rise. No footsteps guide you. No instructions have been given, and yet you know where to go. Not a sound, not a whisper, but a summons. It arrives not in words, but in sensation, like the moment before thunder, when the air tightens, or like standing on a high ledge and remembering that the earth waits below. through the corridor, past the hall of calligraphy, beyond the lacquered door that always remains ajar but never opens. Tonight, it opens, and the air behind it is cool. The passage ahead is narrow, lined with stone that has not seen daylight in years. You descend, not with hesitation, but with reverence, as though the floor itself were woven from silence. At the bottom, a single door carved with no characters. You press your palm to it. It does not resist. Inside, a chamber, empty, but for a single circle drawn in the dust at the center of the floor. The spiral, not ink, not charcoal, but ash, as if it had once burned. You step forward, and the door closes behind you, not with force, but inevitability. There is no fear, only knowing. You kneel within the circle, and as you do, a breath you did not know you were holding escapes your lips. In that moment, the chamber is not empty. You are not alone. Though no figure stands near, though no voice breaks the quiet, you feel presence, You realize something you cannot name has seen you. It's always seen you. The spiral is not a message. It is a meeting place, and you have arrived. The morning returns, as it always does, slowly, without announcements spilling over the red-tiled roofs in silent sheets of gold, illuminating walls that do not welcome light, but rather tolerate it. You rise before the drum. You do not return to your ordinary route. Something has shifted. You no longer walk where you are told, but where you are pulled. The spiral lives inside your breath now, shaping your movement, your stillness, your listening. You find yourself in the archives, not the imperial ones. Those remain sealed beneath jade locks and watched by eyes that never blink, but the servants. Records kept in a narrow chamber behind the linen storeroom, where yellowed slips of bamboo and faded scrolls rest in drawers no one has opened for years. You're not supposed to be here, but no one stops you. You unroll it gently. Inside are notes, rotations of night staff from decades ago, lineages of dishwashers, fuel boys, candle trimmers. You read them slowly, rhythmically, letting each line settle like dust on your shoulders. You reach for the oldest file bound in worn silk, labeled with ink so faint it resembles the trace of a whisper rather than a name. And then a blank, a space where a name should be, an entry interrupted, a mark in the corner, a spiral, not drawn with ink, but scraped into the fiber itself, perhaps by a fingernail or by the edge of a spoon stolen from the kitchens. You trace it once with your eye, and then again with your breath. You look for the surrounding names. To the left, he of the inner well. To the right, the one who stepped beyond the bell. Descriptions, not identities. These are not official titles. These are how servants remembered each other through places, moments, absences. Near the lowest corner, beneath a half-torn notice of grain allotments, there is a crack in the stone, no larger than your thumb, in your pulse, and between them, no name, no rank, no punishment, removed from duty, but not removed from memory. The scroll says no more. You close it, yet the spiral does not close with it. It now waits in your hand. in the air around you. You leave the records room, your fingers still tingling. Later, as you pass the wall of inscriptions near the garden gate, the one where imperial edicts are posted and immediately forgotten, you notice something odd. Within it, tucked tightly, a scrap of fabric, old, faded, threadbare. You ease it free and fold it, and there, stitched in the center, with thread nearly vanished by Tim's spiral, you close your eyes, and for a moment, you see him, the one without a name, kneeling in the dust, holding a needle, sewing the spiral, not for rebellion, not for prayer, but for memory. And now you carry it forward. You are assigned as part of your daily rotation to carry firewood to the imperial kitchen's end. Errand so ordinary, so beneath notice, that it rarely draws attention. The halls leading to the kitchen chambers are wide and warm, filled with the smell of smoke and broth and the rhythm of 100 quiet labors. Bowls are washed, knives flash, flames flicker under massive bronze pots the size of beds. His eyes follow nothing, but seem always to be watching something that happened long ago. You move through this world as though passing through steam, and there, seated by the coals, a figure you've seen but never heard, a eunuch, older than the rest, his robes soft with age, his hands folded, not in rest, but in recollection. You offer him a bow as you pass, but today he speaks, not loud, not urgently, but clearly, as though speaking not to you, but to the air that listens best when no one answers. There was once a boy, he says, staring into the fire. He carried rice, nothing more. He never looked up, but one day he stopped, right there, by that post. You follow his gaze, a post like any other wooden, scorched, worn. He stared for a long time, then knelt, then placed his hand on the stone floor and did not rise. But by distance, so many years between the telling and the moment that the words seemed to stretch to reach it, you say nothing. The old man's voice is soft, broken not by emotion. We tried to move him. He would not move. They asked for his name. He gave none. They asked for his reason. He said nothing. The fire pops. He does not blink. After 3 days, they dragged him away. I never saw him again, but sometimes, here on the edge of the hearth, always after the third watch, always when no one else is near, he lifts one palm slowly. Sometimes I find ashes in the shape of a curl. You don't ask who he means. You don't ask why he tells you now. You simply listen. The spiral is not mentioned, but it is present in the way he looks at the floor, in the pause between his words. They're etched faintly into the stone, barely visible through soot and age as a mark. In the silence that deepens after his voice fades, he looks at you then, not directly, but as if seeing something just behind you. If you find him, do not speak his name. He never gave it. He never wanted it. You bow again, and when you turn to go, you glance once at the post where the boy had knelt. 3 waves, not drawn, but pressed, as though the weight of presence alone had carved it. You walk on, and the smell of rice and smoke follows you. but so does the story. And though it has no ending, it now lives in you. It begins with a mistake. You are tasked with delivering folded cloths to the record keepers, a dull errand along the back halls that trace the edge of the Hall of Ceremonial Histories. You've passed this corridor many times, stone walls lined with scroll niches, brass candle holders gone black with age, a quiet more solid than air. But today, something catches your eye. A door, not large, not grand, bare wood, iron hinges rusted, but open, only slightly still, and inside, darkness. Cool, dry rows of low cabinets lined the walls, filled not with scrolls, but with books bound in leather, silk, reed paper, some wrapped in faded ribbons. You run your fingers along one. You glance back. No one watches. You step inside. The air is thick with dust, and something older than dust memory, perhaps, or its bones. Then another. Then you stop. At the center of the shelf, nestled between volumes so old their titles have faded entirely, is a black book, thin, untitled, no label, no thread, just black. You lift it gently. It is heavier than it should be. The cover is soft not from age, but from something you cannot name. You open it. The first page is blank. So is the second. It's the third, the fourth, and then the fifth. That its center, a spiral drawn not in ink, not in pigment, but in negative space, as if the very fibers of the page bend away from it, refusing to carry its shape, yet unable to forget it. 3 waves curled inward, not moving, and yet impossible to look away from. You try to turn the page. It does not move. You try again. The paper holds firm, not stiff, but rooted. You try to tear it. It does not yield. You press the page closed. The spiral vanishes. But behind your eyes, it remains. You replace the book slowly, but the shelf resists. The book will not slide back in. You turn and realize something has shifted. The shadows on the floor are longer, the air colder. You exit the room. The door closes behind you. No latch clicks. It simply becomes wall again, but your hands are warm. And when you glance at your palm, a faint outline, a curve, a whisper, a memory of the spiral lingers where none should be. The book did not want to be read because reading was not the point. It opened nothing on the page. It opened something in you. That night, the silence returns, heavier than before, not cruel, not cold, but complete, like a curtain drawn across the edges of the world. You lie on your mat, breath shallow, hands still. No lantern flickers, no wind stirs. The forbidden city has folded itself into darkness, And yet, before sleep comes, you feel it's a presence, not in the room, but beneath your ribs, as though the book still rests there, spine against spine. Sleep takes you like a slow tide, and when your eyes open again, you are not in your room. You are in a space without corners, without walls. Light hangs without a source. Before you on a pedestal of nothing rests, the black book, open, waiting. You step forward. The pages are no longer blank. The first shows your hands wrapped in linen, holding a broom. The second, your feet bare, dusty, standing beside a pond. The third, your eyes reflected in a mirror that remembered your absence. Each page contains a moment you've lived, not dramatic, not grand, but precise, sacred in its ordinariness, and always woven into the edges, curling beneath the ink, pulsing behind the shapes of spiral, not loud, not central, but constant. You flip the page, it's not with hands, but with breath, and each one turns with a weight that is not weight, but memory. There you are, receiving soup. There you are, kneeling before a stone marked by time. There you are, dreaming of red lacquered corridors that do not end. And the spiral follows, page after page. It does not demand. It does not explain. It simply remains, and then a blank page. You reach it and stop. It is waiting. You understand? This one is not written. You kneel. Not yet. The book glows faintly, not with light, but with stillness. You do not write on the page. You only touch it, okay? And as your fingers brush the surface, a new spiral forms. Small, inward turning, not in ink, but in presence. A spiral made of the shape your story has taken. It is not a mark you left. It is a path you walked, okay? And you wake before the page turns again, back in your chamber. Breath steady, hands folded, the darkness unchanged. But the silence feels different. Now, it is not emptiness. It is the beginning of a sentence you are finally learning how to read. The morning begins with fog, thick and heavy, sliding across the courtyards like breath over a mirror. The servants move slowly, their feet muffled, their voices hushed even more than usual. It's as if the city itself has pulled a curtain over its eyes and asked to remain asleep just a little longer. Your duties are minimal today, a place rarely visited, whose windows remain shuttered even at noon, whose doors sigh when opened as though they are waking from dreams of fire and dust. By chance, or by quiet design, you are sent to deliver candles to the northern wing. There, down a narrow corridor with cracked tiles and red pillars gone pale with sun, you find the room. It is not marked. Its hinges are stiff, but when you push, it opens. Inside, darkness, not the darkness of night, but the darkness of waiting. You step in, and the door closes behind you without a sound. The air smells of cedar, oil, and something older varnish over memory. At the center of the room, resting on a low black stand, is the instrument. You do not know its name. 7 strings stretch across its surface, none of them broken, none of them tuned. Dust covers everything except the strings. 'Tis long, narrow, carved from a single piece of wood as dark as the water beneath the moon. You kneel. You do not ask why. You do not question. You simply place your fingers over the first string and pluck. No sound, nothing. You try the second, the third. Silence remains, but the air around you begins to change. Subtle breathing, then you see it. On the far wall, just above the baseboards, a shimmer, a tremor, not light, not color, but motion. The dust begins to dance, tiny specks swirling in slow arcs. You pluck again. No sound. Go. But now the wall shows it. Spirals. Dozens. Not carved. Not painted. Go. But rippling gently, as if water beneath the breeze. Each pluck of your finger becomes a wave. Not through the ears, but through the stone, the floor, the marrow. The room is singing. You are not hearing it. You are remembering it. Your eyes sting, not from sadness, from recognition, because the pattern on the wall it spirals, not identical. Each one is slightly different, like fingerprints, like snowflakes, like breath. And one of them matches the drawing on your hidden paper exactly. 3 curls, leftward, steep, precise. You rise, touch it. The spiral cools beneath your skin, not cold, but still, like a bell just after its final note. You bow and leave. The door closes again behind you. But this time, the silence does not return as emptiness. It returns as music not yet played. The sky opens without warning. No thunder, no wind, just rain, soft at first, then heavier, then steady as a hand pressed against the skin. You are outside when it begins, crossing one of the eastern courtyards with a bundle of dried herbs tied in twine. Okay. There is nowhere to run, and no one calls for shelter. Okay. The rain is not cruel today. It is ... Remembering, you walk slower. The path beneath you darkens with moisture. The world blurs around the edges. Everything becomes sound. The hush of falling drops on tile. The hiss of water against leaves. The deep breath of a tree's roots drinking from below. You stop beneath your feet. Flagstones smooth, gray, late centuries ago. Between them, moss, ordinary at first glance, but then you see it. A curve, then another, then 3. The moss has grown, not in patches, but in a pattern, a spiral, not perfect, not artificial, but unmistakable. You kneel. Raindrops soak your sleeves, your hair. You lean closer. The spiral curls from one corner of the stone outward, thickening with each ring, reaching toward the center of the courtyard. You follow it. Another spiral, smaller. This one embedded in the joint where 2 tiles meet. You rise, look outward. Now you see it. All across the courtyard, the growth of green, the curves and the cracks. The twist of roots peeking through the drainage channels form a vast pattern, invisible unless viewed from the center. A field of spirals, not carved, not placed, but grown. Still the earth itself has been listening. Still it too remembers. You stand still in the rain, arms heavy, eyes wide. No one else enters the courtyard. No one sees, only you. And yet, you do not feel alone. The spiral beneath your feet pulses not, with light, not with sound, but with presence. You step forward once. The water pools around the spiral's edge. It does not wash it away. Instead, it seems to feed it. You remain there until the rain stops. By then, the moss glows faintly in the soft, wet light. You do not speak, but within your chest, a quiet knowing unfolds. The spiral does not belong to people. It does not belong to books. It belongs to the world. It is the shape the rain takes when it remembers how to fall. You are summoned without warning. No explanation. no ceremony, only a simple nod from a senior steward whose eyes do not meet yours and whose footsteps you follow in complete silence through corridor after corridor, further north than you have ever been permitted. Q. Past shuttered gates, locked pavilions, bridges that cross dry canals, long since drained of meaning. Can the nan open courtyard, circular, enormous, empty. The wind here does not echo waits. At the center, embedded in the ground, not laid, but chiseled directly into the very bones of the courtyards, a spiral. The stone tiles are weathered and pale, each worn smooth from centuries of absence. Not small, not hidden, vast, so wide it fills the entire space, ring upon ring, curling inward, etched deep into the ground, each groove like the breath of a giant turning in sleep. You are alone. Even the steward who led you here has vanished. You walk forward slowly, each step landing inside a line that winds further and further inward. The spiral pulls you not by force, but by rhythm. Your pace matches its shape. You are no longer thinking. You are remembering, and then you see it, the break. Gap, barely visible at first, but there. One of the rings, just before the center ends too early. It should continue, but it stops, cleanly, as if someone meant to return and finish it, but never did. You kneel beside the gap. Your hand traces the stone, cool, smooth. Then you'll hear it, not with your ears, but in the marrow of your bones. A voice, no language, no tone, only breath, forming your name. Not the name others use, not the name you answer to in the laundry or in the kitchens or in the halls, but the name buried deep within the part of you that has never spoken aloud. You do not repeat it. You cannot, but you recognize it because the spiral has spoken it, because the missing ring belongs to you, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but truly. This spiral is incomplete, and you are the shape that will finish it. You rise. The courtyard does not change. The air remains still, but something has shifted. The city knows you now, not as a servant, not as a footnote, but as the one who was meant to arrive. Night falls without a sound. No bells, no drums. Only the slow retreat of light and the arrival of something deeper than dark in understanding that this city, even when still, is never asleep. You rise, not because you're told, but because your breath tells you to. You walk not toward a duty, but toward the spiral's memory, which now lives behind your eyes, like a dream you did not mean to keep, but cannot let go. Your steps carry you back to the courtyard. No one stops you. No one sees you. The gates open as though they expect your return. And there it is again, the vast spiral, carved into stone, gleaming faintly beneath the moon's pale breath. You follow the path, slower this time, not because of fear, but because you are beginning to understand. The spiral does not lead to something. It is the something. Its ring, each curve, each breath drawn between steps is not a preparation for revelation, is the revelation. You walk and walk. The rings narrow. The world recedes. Noise leaves you. Time becomes soft. And then you reach it, the center, the spiral's heart. But there is no platform, no symbols, no voice, only a small circular depression in the stone, worn, polished smooth not by tools, but by touch, by presence, by the weight of many who came before you and did what you now do. Kneel, you kneel, your palms rest upon the stone. It is warm, not from the sun, but from the memory it keeps. And in that stillness, you realize there is no final message, no ending, no prize. Spiral never wanted to be solved. It wanted to be followed. Because the following is the becoming. You are no longer someone chasing a symbol. You are the motion itself. You are the curve, the echo, code the breath between the breath. Your story does not rest at the center. It circles outward, again and again and again. The spiral was not meant to answer. It was meant to return. The days that follow unfold like scrolls loosened by wind, their edges curling inward with meaning you cannot fully read, but begin to feel beneath your skin. And though your duties resume cleaning the lacquer bowls, folding robes for the officials, sweeping the outer hallways, you are no longer merely performing motions. You are listening to the shape of time itself. And the more you listen, the more you begin to notice where the spiral hides, in the way incense coils hang from the beams above the altar. There's smoke winding upward like prayers that forget their words but not their direction. In the design of the bronze mirrors used by the court astrologers, whose backs bear ancient constellations wrapped in curling dragons in concentric circles. In the ancient maps of the night sky, you are sent to dust one morning, where the stars are not laid out in grids, but in flows galaxies traced by hands who saw in darkness not emptiness, but rhythm, and among them the spiral appears again and again. Never labeled, never named, but always at the center of motion, as if the heavens themselves breathed in curves. And one day, as you carry a message across the stone courtyard of the southern pavilion, an elderly monk stops you not with a word, but with a gaze that feels like wind pressed into cloth, and he says only this: do not follow the stars that move straight. Follow the ones that turn. They are the ones that remember. And then he turns and vanishes into shadow. And you do not chase him, because you already know what he means for that night. When your rest comes slowly and your thoughts circle like moths around an unseen flame, you dream not of the forbidden city, but of an ancient tomb in the hills beyond, carved deep into the belly of the earth, and within it, spiral staircases descending into quiet chambers where no emperor was buried, only the memory of wind and stone drums etched with curving lines meant not to be beaten, but to be understood. And when you wake, your fingers are curled as if tracing a pattern in sand, and your breath carries the weight of centuries. And though no one around you changes, and no one speaks of the stars, the city feels different, not louder, not quieter, but deeper, as though you are now walking not on stones, but on thoughts. In every wall, every gate, every pool reflects the shape you've come to recognize, not as a mystery, quote, as a motion without end, The wind shifts direction the day you are assigned to assist in clearing the overgrown path beyond the outer guitars, so rarely given to someone of your rank that you wonder, for a moment, if the request was meant for another, but no one corrects it, and no one questions your leaving. So you follow the narrow stone trail that curls outward from the forbidden city, like a forgotten vein, past dry gardens and abandoned prayer stones, and the hushed remnants of an old astronomical watchtower that now leans slightly to the east as though bowing to the past. And further still, until the earth itself begins to rise and fall in soft hills, the kind that do not announce what they hide, but do not conceal it either. And there, beneath the roots of a tree, split by time and silence, you find a circular slab half buried in the soil. Its surface worn by rain and seasons, yet still carved with purpose, a spiral etched deep into the stone. Its curves wide and slow, drawing your eye inward like breath drawn before a word is spoken. And at first you feel the now familiar pull of recognition, the subtle ache in your fingertips. It's a tightening in your chest that tells you you've found something that remembers you. But then you see it, a fracture, climbing cruel, cutting through the outer ring and slicing across the flow, breaking the spiral not by accident, but by design, and your body stiffens as if the silence has sharpened around you, because this spiral does not move, it does not breathe, it does not return, it ends. You trace the crack with your hand and feel a coldness that is not from the stone, but from the story it holds, and suddenly the air around you seems to whisper not your name, but a warning, low and circling. Do not try to reverse what is meant to turn. Do not seal what is meant to open. Do not command what was meant only to be followed. And you understand, without needing words, that this tomb does not belong to a servant or an emperor, but to someone who tried to bind the spiral to control it, to hold its rhythm in place like a caged wind. And the stone cracked, not from time, but from defiance, because the spiral is not a tool, not a path to power. It's a shape of submission to the flow of time and whoever lies. Beneath this broken seal, tried to make it something else, and failed, and now the spiral watches, even in its fractured form. A warning carved in silence, a scar that still breathes, and you rise slowly, heart heavy with the knowing that some spirals cannot be repaired, and some silence cannot be comforted. And as you walk away from the tomb, your steps feel slower, not from fear, but from reverence, because now you know. The spiral does not only turn to invite, it also turns to refuse. It begins with dust, not the kind that gathers in corners, but the fine, golden kind that floats in stillness like memory waiting to settle. And it hangs in the air as you enter the upper observatory hall, summoned not by word, but by chance, your sweeping duties redirected, your route rerouted, and suddenly you find yourself in the one place you had only heard spoken of in careful tones, where the court's sky watchers map the breathing of the heavens. And though no one acknowledges you, no one stops you either, so you linger by the wall, eyes wide as the astronomers move in slow, careful rhythms, sliding scrolls from lacquered cases, adjusting polished brass arms of great rotating spheres suspended from wooden beams. Their motions silent, reverent, almost ritual. and then you see it. A star map unrolled upon a jade-inlaid table. Its surface dark as night and spangled with tiny flecks of silver ink, representing stars, some in arcs, some in rosebud one formation, stands apart, a curl of points that loop inward in a spiral. Not tight, not decorative, but calculated with precise numerical spacing, and you ask yourself what star sits at its center. But there is none, only empty ink, only dark, as if the spiral is not rotating around a star, but around silence itself. And as you gaze deeper, you notice that other maps bear similar forms, not always in the same place, not always the same size, but always that same impossible spiral, etched with a quiet urgency. And you begin to understand. The heavens do not move as we expect them to. They do not circle us. They do not bow to our calendars. They do not mirror the emperor's throne or the capital S gates. They spiral toward something else, something unseen, and we are not at the center, and never were. And the spiral is not a symbol of balance, but of humility, of orbit, of being caught in the pull of something vast and unknowable. And as the night deepens and you watch the sky through the open slats of the roof, stars shift almost imperceptibly, and you swear you see them curl, not by accident, not by trick of the eye, but by truth. And in that moment, you are not afraid. You are freed. 'Cause to know you are not the center is to be released from the burden of purpose, and to become, instead, a part of the turning itself, a speck in the motion, a single step in the spiral path that belongs to everything. There is a room in the southern wing of the archive compound that no one speaks of directly, though a store is passed each day by quiet scribes and candle tenders, its hinges worn not from use, but from being ignored. And you are sent there one evening as the lanterns are being lit, told only to dust the floor and leave quickly. And though the instruction carries no tone of warning, something in the hush around the door tells you this place is not meant to be entered lightly. Yet you obey, stepping into the chamber whose air tastes of ink, cedar, and something heavier, perhaps wax melted long ago over secrets never recorded. Down at the center of the room, set atop a low marble platform, rests a box, long, narrow, carved from blackened wood that does not reflect light, but swallows it gently, like a pool that has forgotten how to ripple. And though no locks or hinges are visible, you know instantly that it cannot be opened, not by hand, not by force, not by design, for its surface is unbroken save for one carved emblem on its lid, a spiral so shallow it seems drawn in breath rather than blade, its curves tight and deliberate. And as your eyes settle on it, you feel again that familiar stirring in your chest, the slow turning of recognition. But this time, it is accompanied by something new, a sense of displacement, not of time, but of place, as if your footing shifts not with motion, but with memory. And then you notice it, the objects in the room: scrolls, brush stands, wooden stools do not face the same direction as when you first entered. And when you look back toward the door, it feels slightly further away, slightly taller, slightly less itself. And you realize this is not the first time such things have moved, because the dust on the floor does not match the footprints, and the candle shadows flicker where no draft moves, and the long shadow of the box never lies the same way twice. You leave quietly as instructed, but the next morning, something compels you to return. And though the box has not opened, the room has rearranged itself again subtly, kidly, like a stage awaiting a scene that cannot be rehearsed. And day by day, you begin to understand that the spiral carved on the box is not decoration, not warding, but influence. It holds the room, not within its wood, but within its pattern. And the box does not open because it does not need to, because what it holds is already leaking outward, turning space inward, folding walls around itself until the room forgets its corners and becomes instead a spiral in architecture, a chamber that breathes inward, and you are no longer certain whether you enter it or it enters you. And when you finally step away for the last time, you do so not because you fear what's inside the box, but because you fear how close you've come to being part of it. It is said in whispers among the oldest archivists that beneath the stones of the Forbidden City, beneath the lacquered beams and red walls, beneath the chambers and kitchens and temples that rise with imperial precision, there are older layers, layers not mapped, not named, not remembered, and though they do not appear in scrolls or edicts, their breath can still be felt in certain corners of the city where footsteps echo too long, or where lanterns refuse to stay leaden one morning. During a rare visit to the outer training field to deliver ink for record keeping, you are told, almost absently, to assist a group of surveyors who have uncovered an irregularity in the foundation of a long abandoned watchpost, and you kneel among cracked stone and flaking brick, cues brushing away dust and root veins, expecting only the usual debris, old coin fragments, maybe broken tiles, till your fingers touch a curve in the earth, shallow and unmistakable, a line that arcs not randomly, but with purpose, and you clear more soil, slowly, reverently, revealing not one line, but many, curling inward, drawn into each other like breath after breath, and it is a spiral, larger than your arm span, carved directly into the buried foundation stone, and as you uncover more of it, the edges begin to fade downward, not in clarity, but in depth, because the spiral does not end at the surface. It descends, and what you have uncovered is not the symbol, but only the beginning of its ascent from below. Curiosity grips you like water, rising around the ankles, and you dig further, ignoring the murmurs behind you, ignoring the shifting wind. And as the soil falls away in handfuls, the spiral deepens, and a second layer appears beneath the first, carved in mirror image, curling opposite downward, not upward. And you realize that this is not a symbol drawn to be seen, but a passage meant to be followed, a line etched not for the eye, but for the body, for the spirit, for the breath of someone descending into silence and returning as something else. And as your hands begin to tremble with the weight of what you now understand, you feel the stone beneath you pulse night with life, but with memory, because this spiral does not represent something. 'Tis something. It is the wound and the healing, the descent and the rise, the forgetting and the remembering, and even as the others call you back, Even as the day ends and the sun shifts, you kneel a moment longer, hand on the cold edge of the spiral's lip, knowing you've touched not a relic, but a return. There is a corner of the southern garden where few walk, not because it is forbidden, but because it is forgotten. It's overgrown with creeping moss and shaded by willow trees whose long branches sweep the ground like the sleeves of monks in prayer. And it is here, late one afternoon, the sun begins to fold itself into the horizon and the sky bleeds with the soft gold of sleep, that you find the old well hidden behind flowering stone, its rim cracked but sturdy, its wooden bucket rotted through with age. And though the well is no longer used, its ropes, long since vanished, and its purpose, erased, it remains open-mouthed, waiting as if it has not drawn water for years, but still listens for voices. Drawn by something you cannot name, you lean forward, peering into the dark hollow, expecting only the usual stillness, depth, perhaps the glint of distant water. Yet what you see is motion, not from below, but from within the surface itself. A gentle turning that begins not with your breath or movement, but from the water's own remembering, and as you watch, the reflection begins to curve subtly at first as the light wavers on the ripples, and then more clearly a spiral, not formed by hand or rope or stone, but by the echo of stillness being disturbed, and you realize with quiet awe that the water is not just reflecting you, but reflecting time, tracing a shape it has seen before, perhaps in stars, perhaps in stone, perhaps in the breath of someone long gone who once stood exactly where you now stand, and your eyes blur not from emotion, but from understanding. 'Cause the spiral in the water is not carved or drawn, it is remembered, repeated in liquid motion, like a song hummed beneath the breath. And as the breeze stirs and the willow leaves dance above, the spiral continues, turning not to answer, but to exist, and you remain there long after the sun has vanished, long after the sky has gone to sleep, staring into that motion, feeling your heart slow, your thoughts unwind, until it becomes unclear whether you are gazing into the spiral or it is gazing into you. For in water, all shapes are temporary, yet none are ever truly lost. That night, sleep does not come gently, but it does not resist you. Either it arrives in folds, like fabric placed upon your shoulders by unseen hands, and you drift not into darkness, but into weightlessness, into a world where the walls breathe and the air hums with color, and the city around you has vanished. Yet it has not gone, it has only shifted. It has softened its corners and extended its memory outward to cradle your body in a space that is not quite dream, not quite memory, but something older, deeper, circular. And there, in that place between silence and knowing, you see the spiral not carved, not drawn, not imagined, but living, a presence shaped not by limbs or face, but by motion itself, and it stands before you, or perhaps around you, a being made entirely of curves, its skin woven from wind, its breath curling like incense through an unseen current, and though it has no mouth, it speaks not with sound, but with direction, each turn of its form vibrating with meaning, and you do not hear your name, but you feel it. It's unraveling inside your chest, syllables that were never taught to you, yet have always belonged, and the spiral pulses once, not brightly, not loudly, but deeply, and you understand that it is not asking you to follow, nor commanding you to turn. It is recognizing you, acknowledging the echo of itself within your breath. And you feel suddenly that you are not dreaming, but being remembered, as if the spiral, this living motion, this quiet awareness, has dreamed you into being instead. Okay, you reach out not with your hand, but with your thought. Then the spiral leans in closer, not to envelop, not to consume, but to offer understanding. And in its nearness, you realize it is not a thing to be solved, not a mystery to be answered, but a language that only feeling can read. And just before waking, it circles you one last time, curling from your feet to your shoulders in a single unbroken breath. And as your eyes begin to open, you do not remember the shape, but the sensation. And the silence that lingers is not emptiness, but a sentence you have not yet finished reading. It is late in the season, when the rains stop arriving on time, when the birds nest lower in the trees, and the wind carries unfamiliar scents from the northern fields. And one morning, you were tasked with delivering a small scroll to the Palace of Embers, a seldom visited wing lined with forgotten altars and sealed chambers whose doors have not grown open in years. And while searching for the steward in charge, you pass a side corridor half lit by filtered sunlight, where a shrine stands quiet and unopened, its wooden screen folded aside just far enough to reveal a single stone block seated atop a cracked pedestal. And upon that block a seal, square and solid, carved from jade, so dark it appears black, and marked not with dragons or phoenixes, not with names or blessings, but with a single spiral pressed into its face like a whisper frozen into rock. And as you approach, the air changes, not colder, not warmer, but denser, thicker, as though the space itself resists your steps, and your breath slows without effort, not from fear, but from gravity. And you understand, without reading any inscription, that this was not made to protect, but to contain. And the spiral, though fixed into the jade, still breathes underneath it, the same spiral you have seen in stone, sky, water, dreams, now locked behind centuries of silence, yet not silenced, only slowed. And as you place your hand upon the sealed surface, it feels smooth at first, lifeless, inert, but then a shiver runs through your fingertips. Not movement, but memory, and the jade warms against your skin, as if remembering the shape of the chisel that once cut its lines. And suddenly, you see it. The spiral docente, and at the edge of the sealet, continues beneath it, turning inward into the unseen, into a hollow space no eye can reach. And you realize the seal did not trap the spiral. It only marked the place where someone tried long ago and failed, because the spiral cannot be contained. It does not submit to stone. It does not obey metal. It does not fear forgetting. It simply waits, curves, returns. You step back slowly, and as you leave, you notice a crack running through the pedestal, thin, clean, fresh, and though no one speaks of the shrine, though no one seems to remember who placed the seal there or why, you know the spiral has never been fully locked away, because even when pressed in stone, it still turns, still breathes, still finds its way into the water, into the soil. into the silence between footsteps, and perhaps even into the corners of the city that watch you when no one else does. The first thing you notice is not the silence, but the softness it gathers in the corners of the hall like mist that refuses to lift. A hush woven not from absence, but from abundance, where footsteps fall upon carpets so thick they swallow sound, and walls are veiled in silk, broidered with cranes and clouds and endless patterns of curling gold thread. And as you pass beyond the screens held open by lacquered pillars and shadowed attendants, you find yourself in a world where even the air is measured, scented with powdered amber and jasmine, and something subtler beneath it, a scent like paper just before it burns. And here, the nobles walk not with urgency, but with choreography, their sleeves long and weighted with embroidery, their eyes lowered yet always watching, and you are invisible in the way all attendants are present, necessary and entirely unacknowledged. Yet, you see, you hear, you feel the spiral in their lives, not carved into stone or dream, but stitched into conversation, curled into etiquette, spiraled into ritual. A cup poured, not directly, but with the elbow turned outward 3 degrees. A bow held for the length of a breath, drawn to half. A glance passed between 2 noble women that circles a truth neither can speak aloud, but both understand the rotation of favor, the turn of surveillance, the unspoken orbit of danger that no jewel can shield against. And you watch as one lord, dressed in midnight blue, accepts a scroll from a eunuch with a smile too slow to be kind, deliberate to be sincere, and in that smile is an entire spiral of politics alliances, betrayals, debts that bend but never break, always returning. And though the tables are filled with delicacies, birds carved into blossom shapes, fruit peeled into spiraling ribbons, and wine poured in a spiral motion from height to cup, no one truly eats their hungers elsewhere, coiled beneath their tongues, their desires tucked behind silk in silence. And you realize, slowly, that power here is not held in straight lines or proclamations, but in the curved paths of rumor, in the rotation of who sits closest to the emperor today, who speaks last, who stays silent longest. And you understand that even here especially, here the spiral reigns, not as a symbol of eternity, but as the shape of survival, because in this world, to rise is not to climb, but to turn again and again, like a leaf caught in wind that never stops circling. It is not your place to listen, and yet you are there just beyond the lattice screen that separates the outer serving hall from the private. A chamber, your presence unnoticed, or perhaps simply tolerated in the way that certain silences are accepted as part of the furniture, and before you, the room unfolds not with chaos or urgency, but with a stillness so heavy it seems to anchor the very air. And around a low rosewood table sit 5 figures in robes, intricately patterned. They appear to move as the lanterns flicker, embroidered dragons coiling around, broidered mountains, waves circling plum blossoms that bloom in golden thread. And none of them speak, not at first, not in any way a common ear might call speech, for their conversation exists in nods, in the slow lifting of a porcelain teacup, pink, in the deliberate placing of a fan upon the table at an angle just slightly off center. And though their mouths open, what emerges are words without names, statements without subjects, allusions to people not mentioned by title, but by season, gesture, color, direction. The one who wears spring on his sleeves will not see the second harvest, says one voice, and another replies with a sip of tea and a slight tilt of the head toward the west-facing wall. And you realize that the entire meeting is a spiral, its center absent, its meaning turning inward, coded, unfolding with each slow breath, each exchanged glance that loops in tension between gazes without ever anchoring to truth. And as you try to follow the pattern, you begin to feel dizzy, not from confusion, but from the rhythm, the ritual of unspoken agreements, of deniable warnings passed from sleeve to sleeve, of secrets so old they no longer require words at all. And suddenly, you understand that the most powerful knowledge here is not held in documents, nor spoken in court, but shared in these silent spirals, passed like smoke rings from mind to mind, invisible to those who stand outside the loop, and deadly to those who misstep within it. The meeting ends without conclusion, no decision made aloud, arcade, and yet every person leaves the room changed, aligned, aware. And as the last noble disappears behind a silken curtain, you remain still, your breath shallow, 'cause now you know what it means to be inside the spiral of power. It is not to control it, but to learn its turns, to bend your meaning like a river bends light, to vanish behind implication, and to live if one is careful as a shape too soft to strike and too curved to catch. There is a garden behind the Jade Hall, a place that no one names, where no maps are drawn and no servants are ever summoned directly, only assigned through subtle redirections of duty. And one morning, without asking, you were told to sweep its stone paths before dawn. And as the sky lightens like parchment washed in tea, you step beyond the carved gate and find yourself in a space unlike any other within the forbidden city, a place where everything bends, not only in structure, but in purpose. Paths that curve gently instead of leading directly. Bridges that rise like waves and fall again without crossing water. Stones arranged not in rows, but in spirals so slow you don't notice them until you V-walk the circle twice, and only then do you feel it, the soft pull of repetition, the strange familiarity of a path you don't remember choosing. And though the garden is silent, it is not empty, for every leaf is placed as if in conversation with another, every tree pruned not for beauty, but for balance, their shadows curling inward as the sun rises. And then, in that stillness, broken only by the soft rattle of reeds in the pond's edge, you see him, the emperor alone, unguarded, walking slowly along the curved stone path, hands clasped behind his back, robes trailing like mist, and he does not look up, does not speak, but his movement itself is speech, each step a turn, each turn a meditation. And as he moves, you realize that even the sovereign does not walk straight, does not rule through force of direction, but through orbit, pacing the spiral at the garden's heart again and again, as though to remain still is to lose something, and to move is to hold it. You step aside, hidden but observant, and as he passes, the koi in the pond begin to circle, following unseen signals in the movement of wind and reflection, and the spiral returns again, not drawn, not spoken, not carved, but embodied in every breath of this space, in every layer of silk, in the curved branches overhead and away. The sun filters through a screen of pine needles and lands not in light, but in ellipses. And you wonder then if the emperor walks to rule, or if he walks to stay sane, circling a truth that cannot be spoken aloud. A burden so vast it must be traced slowly to keep it from unraveling, because perhaps even at the center of all power, one does not escape the spiral, but merely learns to walk it gracefully. The air inside the imperial treasury is not like the air outside. It is colder, but not from wind, and denser, but not from dust. And as the door groans open, only wide enough for one person to pass, you are ushered in with eyes lowered, your name unspoken, your role already forgotten. 'Cause here, identity does not matter, only silence, only obedience, and only clean, steady hands. And as the great redwood door closes behind you, sealing the chamber again in secrecy, you find yourself surrounded by more than wealth. You are surrounded by memory preserved in metal. Shelves stacked with scroll tubes banded in gold. Trays lined with jade plaques, cabinets whose inner drawers are shaped not in rows, but in arcs, crescents, half-moons, and spirals. And though the geometry may seem incidental, you feel it immediately. This is not the chaos of luxury. This is the rhythm of control. Each box is placed as if along an invisible curve, each ingot laid out as a breath following the last, and in the center of the chamber stands a great bronze basin, filled not with water, but with coins, thousands of them, ancient and recent, heavy with time. And when your task takes you to their edge to dust the surrounding floor, you notice it. The coins are not scattered, not piled, but arranged, spiraling from the center outward in a pattern too deliberate to be accident, too precise to be decoration. And your fingers tremble slightly as you lean closer, seeing that some coins only a few bear an unfamiliar marking on the inner ring, a sigil so small it could be mistaken for a scratch, but is not. It is the spiral not etched like those you've seen in stone or ink or dream, but punched into gold, sharp and permanent. And you wonder what kind of currency was made, not for purchase, but for power, not for market, but for memory, and who once held these coins in their palms, and whether they ever spent them or simply carried them like talismans to mark those who understood. And then you notice the guards at the chamber's corners do not look at you, but they do not blink either. And the clerk, who watches from the shadowed alcove behind the lattice screen, never writes, only listens, and the spiral turns again on the floor. Not in the coins, but in the silence that curls around your breath, in the way no one tells you what these coins are, but everyone stands as though they know, and though you are only here to sweep and leave, something stays with you. Wait, a shape, the curve of golden silence pressed into your memory like an imprint. And long after you've left, long after the door has sealed again behind your back, you still feel the spiral spinning, slow and endless, not in the coin, but in your chest. The story drifts to you on an afternoon thick with the scent of gardenias. It's carried in whispers that weave between half-drawn silk curtains where the imperial concubines sit embroidering phoenix feathers onto gauze no I will ever examine closely. Their voices soft as moth wings, yet heavy with the dust of memory. And while you wait nearby with tea that must never grow cool, you listen not by leaning closer, but by letting their words circle of their own accord, rising and falling like threads drawn through cloth. And the tale they spin is older than any gown they wear, older than the palace itself. Once, they say, there was a mirror forged in secret by a craftsman who understood that silver can remember shapes no chisel dares inscribe. A mirror so finely polished it refused to keep a single image for more than a breath, reflecting not the skin or the eyes of the gazer, but the direction of their heart, the curl of their choices, the hidden spiral of their fate. The mirror, they murmur, was placed within a jade frame carved with cloud patterns, so dense the light itself seemed to tangle. And when the first concubine stood before it, hoping to glimpse her beauty, she saw instead a dark river coiling inward, a spiral that tightened the longer she watched. And before sunrise, she begged to be released from courtly life, claiming madness, her laughter echoing like cracked porcelain. Others looked, to scholars, eunuchs, a young prince aunt. Each returned changed. One spoke only in riddles, another refused food until death. The prince vanished into chambers no servant may name, and so the emperor ordered the mirror hidden sealed behind walls. Built overnight, its existence struck from records, and its maker cast into exile beyond the northern desert. Yet the concubines swear voices barely more than breath that the mirror still waits, its glass cold but awake, somewhere beneath the western storerooms where the floors are always colder, where torches flicker without wind, and a whisper that should anyone gaze into it now, the spiral would not merely appear behind the glass, it would reach outward, curling into the halls, coiling around the pillars, bending time until the city itself remembered how small human faces are compared to the turning of unseen currents. You pour the tea hand steady, but inside your chest something circles slowly because you know. The spiral no longer needs a mirror to speak, yet some part of you aches to stand before that hidden glass, to see whether the curve you feel within would match the one it reveals. And you understand then why the mirror terrified them, not because it lied, but because it showed too clearly that every path bends, every destiny curls back upon itself, and that no silk, no gold, no rank can hold the line of a life straight when the world itself breathes and spirals. It begins in whispers before sunrise, carried on the sandals of messengers who run without sound, on the hurried breaths of eunuchs who vanish behind sliding doors before you can see their eyes. And by midday, the entire palace hums with a tension too heavy for words. The emperor has fallen ill, not with cough or fever, but with something unnamed, a stillness that spreads through his limbs like frost, forgetting of breath, a drifting inward as though his body has turned toward a center no one else can see. And when the imperial physicians arrive, They bring not only their boxes of powdered pearl and ground deer horn, not only their scrolls of pressure points and pulse charts, but their silence, their precision, and most of all, their spirals, thin coils of golden incense that curl like soft claws through the air. Smoke loops drawn with care above the emperor's motionless chest. Circular claws inscribed with diagrams of meridians that twist like rivers flowing toward the unseen. And you watch from beyond the curtain, unseen and unspoken, as they move in quiet rhythm around the sickbed, whispering syllables that are not prayers but old directions, gestures that once charted the body like a landscape of wind and time. Each movement hoping to coax the emperor's spirit back from wherever it has curled itself. For they believe deeply that illness is a spiral turned inward too tightly, a balance wrapped around itself until breath no longer finds room to move. And so they circle again and again, incense trailing from their fingers like questions unasked. And one physician even draws a spiral in water upon the emperor's chest with a brush made from moonhair fur. But nothing changes, not the emperor's breath, not the temperature of the room, not the silence that pulses through the walls like a slow drumbeat. And you understand then what they will not say aloud. The spiral cannot be called, cannot be coaxed or summoned, quote, by symbol, for it is not a guess, but a rhythm. And if it does not wish to return, it will not. And as you watch the smoke curl and vanish into the rafters, you feel a chill in your bones, not from fear, but from recognition, because once again, the spiral has appeared, not as pattern or symbol or echo, but as absence, as a curve that bends not into presence, but into departure. And no tincture nor chant can straighten what has already begun to turn away. The sky over the forbidden city does not darken like any other sky. It dims slowly, like a curtain being drawn with ceremonial grace. And when the sun finally slips behind the western walls, it leaves behind a hush so complete that even the cicadas stop. And that night, in the emperor's 9th day of illness, the court astrologers ascend the north tower with scrolls and silence, wrapped in black robes, stitched with constellations, no longer named aloud. And as you follow behind them, not to assist, but to carry their brass instruments and polished boxes, heavy with history, you feel the stone beneath your feet pulse faintly, as if it too listens for some signal in the heavens. Once atop the tower, they say, little for their craft is not in language, but in line, curve, angle, and rhythm. And they open their charts not to map, but to witness, to measure not what is, but what no longer is, and what now becomes. And as the stars emerge, slow and ancient, you begin to see it too not in the brightness, but in the spaces between, not in the constellations taught to children, but in the way the lesser stars curl away from the others, pulled gently from position, not broken, but persuaded, as if the heavens themselves had begun to turn, as if some force, long asleep behind the sky, now awakens and spins slowly, calling the stars into formation, not written in any scrawl, but known deep in the bones of old stone. And one astrologer breathes in sharply not from fear, but from awes. He traces with a gloved finger the spiral forming in the eastern quadrant, a spiral that matches the shape carved into the abandon. Well, the old seal, the hidden mirror, and the incense that failed to save the emperor. And as he speaks barely above breath, he names it not as omen or curse, cut as memory. The sky, he says, remembers, and the city must listen. And you realize then that the spiral is not rising, it has always been above. Only now it chooses to be seen, and its reflection in the stars is not a sign of change, but of truth returning to view. For in this turning world, all things, kings, stars, servants, dreams eventually curve toward their source. And though no decree is issued and no bells are rung, everyone who sees the spiral in the sky carries its shape back into the trim, sitting silently, heavily, as though holding a mirror too old to reflect light, but too sacred to shatter. The day you are permitted to leave, no longer summoned, no longer needed, no longer seeing you walk through the southern gate as the sun folds itself across the rooftops like a ribbon set aflame. And though no one marks your departure and no bell sounds your release, the city watches quietly, as it always has, from behind screens and stones and stories too long to retell. And as your feet carry you beyond the last ring of red walls, beyond the final layer of ceremonial silence, you expect to feel free or small or forgotten, but instead you feel curved, not in body, but in memory, as if every breath you've taken inside the forbidden city has spun itself around you like thread. And even as you walk in a straight line along the road lined with pine and cypress, you feel yourself turning inward, gently, slowly, not dizzy, not lost, but aware deeply that nothing in your life, no step, no task, no dream was ever truly straight. And as you glance back over your shoulder for what you think may be the final time, you do not see palaces or walls or golden roofs, but a pattern, enormous and quiet, folding over itself like a sleeping river. And you understand, without fear, that you have never truly left, because what lives in stone also lives in wind, and what once turned in silence now turns in you. And as you keep walking, you begin to notice it everywhere, in the way the trees lean, in the way the clouds drift, in the way your thoughts circle back, not to what happened, but to how it felt. And you realize that memory itself spirals, not because it forgets, but because it returns. Each time softer, each time deeper, each time more whole. And you do not know where the road leads, nor how long you will follow it. But you carry the spiral now in your hands, not in your eyes, but behind your breath. And you do not fear what lies ahead, 'cause you know, all things turn, all things bend, all things return.